at the center, but a huge chunk of the dog's training is actually done away from our premises. It's done in real life situations. So we'll take one of our training vans here and load it up full of dogs, and we'll go out to various areas of the community to give the dog real life experiences in mobilizing around certain environments. So what Shona's doing is basically encouraging Fletcher to investigate each of the obstacles and make sure that he seems comfortable. And this is a new situation for him because he's probably never worked in front of all these people like this before. But it's nice to see that his tail is up and he's happy. He's not too concerned or worried or anything. And as a trainer, that's what we're looking for in the dog. The first year and a half of this dog's life, and just like all the other ones in training here, would have been done in with a foster family or with what we call puppy walkers, which is a volunteer base of people that come and basically volunteer with us and take the dogs into their home for the first year and a half of their life to do basically a Canadian resident that's registered as blind or visually impaired is eligible for a guide dog, or at least to be considered for a guide dog. So as an instructor such as myself, we would go out to the person's home area and do a thorough home visit with them to find out if the person has the motivation and the skill and ability to use a guide dog. We'll work the dog through the course, and you'll see that now the dog is wearing what we call a leather body piece. And Shona has a little bit more of an expectation on the dog at this stage. She's getting the dog to walk ahead of her and not necessarily bring the dog around the obstacles, but get the dog to walk up ahead. And she's also using her body position and her arm signals to indicate to the dog what she'd like. This is the biggest chunk of the training period. Once we've done the initial sort of assessment with the dog to know that they do have the sort of mental fortitude to do the job, this developmental stage really progresses probably from the first month or so right through till probably 3 or 4 months. And as the dog develops an understanding for what its expectations are, it'll start to work a little bit better, and it'll eventually start to do some of the work on its own. What you'll hear from Shona, or should hear, is a really nice positive voice, and she's giving a lot of praise to the dog. And that's the fundamentals of guide dog training, is through positive reinforcement. So we want the dogs to enjoy what they're doing, and also they need to be able to receive that praise as well, and understand that when we give praise to the dog, they're understanding that they're giving a behavior that we want from them, and that's basically how we learn. So like any other dog, any other pet dog that you guys might have come in contact with, these dogs do get distracted as well. And having a guide dog is, you have to have that understanding that these dogs are not robots. You know, they're going to get distracted by things in the environment, and it's okay that they do. What we want to see is that the person can control that distraction, whatever it is, and that the dog is comfortable with whatever the distractions might be. We don't want to see any negative reactions or fear reactions or anxieties. We train anywhere between 20 and 30 clients per year. So as far as guide dog schools go, we're a relatively smaller school, but still for what we have, it's quite an accomplishment, we think. Dogs will be pre-matched to each of the clients. So we match those dogs by learning a lot about the people when we interview them. We do a very thorough interview and figure out where they go and what they do and what sort of speed they walk and what their handling ability is. And that's how we make an assessment as to what dog is going to be appropriate for them. We'll be using her voice nice and positively with the dog whenever the dog starts to move for these obstacles. Polly should remain in front of Shona the whole time, and you can see there she's picking up on the obstacles, moving nice and early and leaving lots of room for Shona to move around those obstacles. So the dog's not only moving away from each obstacle to get herself around, but also leaving room for the handler too. Advantage and do it before she's been asked. Otherwise the dogs will start cutting corners in other areas, and they need to remember that they should always wait for the handler to command something or other. Curbs, whenever they're walking along a sidewalk and they come to an intersection, it's the dog's job to get right up to the curb edge and stop or come to a sit at that intersection. Whether they're turning or crossing over or turning back or what have you, it's the dog should always be focused on just getting to that curb edge, stopping and sitting, so that for somebody who's blind or visually impaired, they can use that as an orientation clue to know that, okay, my dog's come to a stop, I can listen for traffic or what have you. They get an idea of whereabouts they are, and then they can either get the dog to do a turn from there, or they can cross over, as I say, or what have you. So that curb work is another really important part of the dog's job, as well as objective location or finding specific things, whether it be buttons that are on traffic light poles or particular doors or chairs or offices or things like that. These dogs really benefit from a lifestyle of routine, so they get to become very familiar with whatever areas they're working in. And while they're in training here, we do that very thing. We go out to certain areas and we'll do them over and over again, so the dogs get very comfortable and they're in a much better position to learn from there. Of course, once they start training with a client, we'll still use those familiar areas, and then when they go home, it's a whole new adjustment for the dog. They need to learn about the client's area. So we provide support for the clients in the early days also. So they'll come here for that 3 or 4 week period, and then they'll go home, and the instructor will go home with them and introduce the new area to them with the dog, and hope to show the dog as positively as possible the new routes that the person will be doing. And it's for a really good reason. You know, the dogs are having to concentrate, but so is the person. You know, whenever they're out moving around with a guide dog, for safety reasons, they need to be concentrating on where they are and what they're doing, because if they get turned around,
Say hi, puppy.